When you think of animals and other creatures closely associated with Japanese Budo, what comes to mind? Both Kendo and Judo, two of Japan's most representative martial arts, can ultimately trace their roots back to the swordsmanship and Jujutsu that developed through the battles of the samurai. In other words, the grappling techniques known as kumyuchi. For the samurai, warfare was quite literally a matter of life and death. For this reason, in addition to honing their martial skills, samurai also sought every possible advantage in battle. They visited shrines, purified themselves beneath waterfalls, and even practiced a ritual known as Kujikiri, a form of mystical hand sign practice familiar to many people from ninja anime. Kujikiri is said to have originally been practiced by ascetics such as Yamabushi, mountain practitioners associated with Japan's ancient mountain worship traditions. They performed these rituals to pray to Buddhist deities and gods, including Marishiten, for protection and safety. The practice later spread among samurai and ninja, becoming known as a ritual for praying for good fortune in battle and protection from harm. Takeda Sokaku, regarded as the de facto founder of Daito-ryu Aiki Jujutsu, and Yamaguchi Gogen, who had a major influence on the development of Goju-ryu karate in mainland Japan, are also known as martial artists who practiced Kujikiri. These examples give us a glimpse into how samurai and martial artists who faced life-or-death combat sought to somehow bring fortune, something beyond their own control, onto their side. And the objects of their prayers were not limited to gods and Buddhas. Surprisingly, their hopes for victory and strength were also placed in animals and other living creatures. Dragons and tigers, of course, have long been regarded throughout East Asia as symbols of strength and authority. But that is not the whole story. Even creatures that at first glance seem to have little connection with martial arts became objects of belief and symbols to which samurai entrusted their hopes and prayers. In this video, we will introduce 10 surprising animals and creatures to which samurai entrusted their martial fortune. The dragonfly has long been regarded as one of the most auspicious creatures in Japanese martial arts and samurai culture. One of the main reasons the dragonfly became associated with the samurai was the way it appeared to fly forward without retreating. Dragonflies can change direction rapidly in mid-air, but to people in the past, they appeared to be creatures that always moved forward and never went backward. For samurai going into battle, this came to symbolize the determination to keep advancing toward victory. Because of this symbolism, the dragonfly came to be known as the victory insect. In particular, during the Sengoku period, samurai incorporated dragonfly motifs into their helmets, armor, and sword fittings, such as the tsuba, or sword guard. These designs were not merely decorative. They were believed to express wishes for victory, a safe return from the battlefield, and courage in combat. Dragonflies are also beneficial insects that prey on pests, and they have long been familiar creatures in the Japanese natural environment. Their swift flight and remarkable ability to change direction in mid-air also evoked the agility and quick movements that samurai valued. For this reason, dragonflies were not admired by samurai simply because they were beautiful or interesting insects. They moved forward without retreating, they were swift, and they always seemed to advance toward victory. Their image came to embody the ideals of warriors who devoted their lives to combat. Dragonfly motifs were therefore incorporated into helmets, sword fittings, and other pieces of samurai equipment. Even today, in Japanese martial arts such as Kendo, the dragonfly is recognized as a symbol of victory and good fortune in battle. In other words, the dragonfly came to symbolize forward movement, victory, and the spirit of never retreating. What is even more striking than the dragonfly is the centipede. Among the military equipment used during Japan's Sengoku period, there were helmets decorated with enormous centipedes as the front crest. But why were samurai associated with centipedes? The background to this lies in the worship of Bishamonten, a Buddhist deity associated with warfare. Bishamonten spread to Japan from India through China. He was originally a guardian deity of Buddhism and is regarded as the same deity as Tamonten, one of the four heavenly kings. He is often depicted wearing armor and carrying weapons. In Japan, he gradually came to be worshipped by samurai as a god of war, particularly as a deity who could grant victory and good fortune in battle. Within Japanese folk beliefs, the centipede eventually came to be regarded as an attendant or messenger of Bishamonten. However, there is an important point to keep in mind here. The centipede is not officially designated as one of Bishamonten's attendants in Buddhist scriptures. Rather, it is thought that the association between Bishamonten and the centipede developed within folk beliefs that emerged in Japan. So why a centipede? One reason lies in the creature's appearance itself. In Japanese, the word for centipede is written with the characters Mukade, meaning 100 legs. As its name suggests, a centipede has a great many legs, and it appears to move constantly forward. For this reason, centipedes came to be associated with qualities such as ferocity, speed, and the power to advance without stopping. These qualities were considered highly auspicious for samurai who fought on the battlefield. Furthermore, Bishamonten was a warrior deity who protected Buddhist teachings by driving away evil. As a result, the centipede associated with Bishamonten came to be seen not simply as a frightening insect, but as a symbol of strength and victory in battle. A famous example illustrating the relationship between centipedes and the samurai is the Mukadeshu, or centipede corps, of the Takeda clan. The Mukadeshu was a unit in the Takeda army responsible for carrying messages and other duties. They moved rapidly across the battlefield, conveying important information. The name Mukade, or centipede, is thought to have reflected the image of moving swiftly, like a creature with countless legs. When we look at the relationship in this way, the centipede was far more than just an insect. In Japan, it became associated with the worship of Bishamonten, the warrior deity, and with values. The motif was also used on military equipment and war banners. At first glance, the rabbit may seem to have little connection with the battlefield. Yet the rabbit has a surprisingly interesting connection with Japanese samurai culture and martial arts. One reason rabbits were admired by warriors was their speed and jumping ability. Rabbits are extremely agile. When they sense danger, they can change direction in an instant and run away at astonishing speed. Their movements were reminiscent of the lightness, explosiveness, and agility that were considered important in combat. The speed at which a rabbit could suddenly take off was well known from ancient times. In martial arts, too, the ability to sense an opponent's movements and react instantly is essential. In this sense, the rabbit's agility overlaps with one of the physical abilities that warriors sought to develop. In the world of the samurai, the image and characteristics of the rabbit were sometimes incorporated into the designs of helmets, sword guards, and other pieces of martial equipment. These designs were not necessarily inspired simply by an affection for rabbits. Rather, they can be understood as expressing an admiration for a creature that is fast, light on its feet, capable of sensing danger, and able to react instantly. The oni, or demon, that appears throughout traditional Japanese culture is more than simply a frightening monster. Since ancient times, oni have been regarded as symbols of various calamities beyond human control, including disease, natural disasters, famine, war, and death. Behind this idea was the fear that people in ancient times had toward unseen disasters. When people encountered unexplained illnesses or sudden disasters, they often believed that they were caused by invisible evil forces. Over time, these frightening forces came to be represented in a more concrete form as oni. Therefore, rather than simply thinking of an oni as evil itself, It may be easier to understand it as a personification of the fear and calamities that could suddenly descend upon human beings. So why is the monkey associated with Oni? In Japan, monkeys were traditionally believed in some contexts to possess the power to ward off evil. One of the best-known examples is the three wise monkeys, famously associated with places such as Nikko Toshogu Shrine. Oni were traditionally believed to enter from the northeast, known as the Kimon, or Demon Gate. Because of this belief, the monkey could be associated with the protection and warding off of evil. Nikko Toshogu Shrine lies to the northeast of Edo, present-day Tokyo. Its location was therefore also understood in the context of protecting the capital from evil influences. There is another interesting association. The Japanese word for monkey, saru, sounds like the verb saru, meaning to leave or to go away. Because of this wordplay, monkeys came to have an auspicious meaning: may disasters go away or may evil depart. At Hiyoshi Taisha Shrine on Mount Hiei, monkeys have also traditionally been revered as divine messengers known as Masaru. Hiyoshi Taisha is located to the northeast of Kyoto, corresponding to the Kimon, or Demon Gate. The name Masaru can be associated with expressions meaning evil departs and to surpass or to prevail. As a result, the sacred monkey came to be regarded as a being that drives away misfortune and brings victory. In other words, if the Oni represents calamity, the monkey can be understood as representing the force that drives that calamity away and overcomes it. The monkey's association with warding off misfortune was also reflected in the weapons and armor of samurai heading into battle. Japanese armor includes a leather component known as komori-zuke no kawa. This is a piece of leather used to reinforce the area connecting the dio, or cuirass, with the kusazuri, the skirt-like protective plates. It was given this name because, when spread out, its shape resembles the wings of a bat. In other words, this is not simply a later association with bats. There is an actual example in Japanese armor where the name bat has been preserved. However, the name Komori-zuke no Kawa does not mean that bats were attached to armor as protective or warding symbols. The name simply comes from the shape of the leather resembling a bat. At the same time, bats themselves have a very interesting auspicious image in Japan that originated in China and was later introduced to Japan. In China, bats have traditionally been regarded as auspicious animals that bring happiness and good fortune. This comes from the fact that the Chinese character fu, meaning bat, sounds similar to fu, meaning fortune or blessing. For this reason, bats became an auspicious motif symbolizing happiness and good fortune, and were used on a wide variety of objects, including clothing and ceramics. This tradition of auspicious symbolism was also transmitted to Japan, where bats began appearing in Japanese decorative patterns and family crests. They were also used on weapons and military equipment, including tsuba, the handguards of Japanese swords. Unlike many of the animals we have looked at so far, the bat has relatively little direct connection to martial concepts. Its meaning appears to be primarily associated with good fortune and auspiciousness. Unlike many of the animals we have looked at so far, the bat has relatively little direct connection to martial concepts. The catfish has a very distinctive meaning in Japanese culture. Today, it is generally thought of simply as an ordinary fish that lives in rivers and ponds. But during the Edo period, catfish were widely believed to be responsible for causing earthquakes. People at the time believed that a gigantic catfish lived beneath the earth and that earthquakes occurred when the creature became violent and thrashed about. Especially during the Edo period, large numbers of prints known as namazu-e were produced, depicting the connection between catfish and earthquakes. These images often portrayed a giant catfish causing an earthquake, along with Kashima Daimyojin, a deity associated with Japanese martial traditions, restraining the creature. In this sense, like the Oni, or demon, the catfish became a symbol of a disaster or overwhelming force that could not easily be controlled by human beings. But this is where an interesting connection between the catfish and martial arts emerges. One of the principal deities depicted as restraining the catfish was Takamikazuchi no Okami, the principal deity of Kashima Jingu Shrine. Takamikazuchi no Okami is known as a martial deity. At the front of prestigious Japanese martial arts dojos, it is sometimes customary to display a hanging scroll bearing various inscriptions. One such inscription reads Kashima Daimyojin. In Edo period Namazue, he was depicted restraining the catfish, believed to cause earthquakes, with a kaname ishi, or foundation stone. Catfish, rang, uncontrollable disaster, and the shaking of the earth. Martial deity, the power to calm and restrain it. As an aside, within the grounds of Kashima Jingu Shrine, there is a massive rock that is said to have been used by the deity Kashima Daimyojin to pin down the giant catfish. The rock still exists today, buried deep beneath the ground. For this reason, the catfish is not a direct symbol of martial arts itself. Rather, it became connected with martial culture as a symbol of the immense forces and disasters that a martial deity was expected to calm and subdue. The catfish also has another interesting characteristic when we consider its connection with martial arts. Its body is extremely slippery, making it very difficult to grip. This quality of being impossible to hold on to and slipping away even when force is applied can evoke ideas found in martial arts, such as softness, redirecting an opponent's force and using that force to one's own advantage. Of course, this does not mean that the catfish was the direct origin of Jujutsu. However, Japanese martial arts have long emphasized the idea that rather than simply overpowering an opponent through brute strength, one can redirect their force or use a flexible body to evade an attack. In this sense, the catfish's slippery body, which easily escapes when one tries to seize it through force, can be seen as an image that resonates with certain martial concepts. The stronger the opponent is, the less one should try to meet that strength head-on. Instead, one can use the opponent's own force to destabilize them. This is closely related to the principle expressed by the famous Japanese martial arts saying, "Ju-yoku-go seisu softness controls hardness." This idea developed in Japanese Jujutsu, Judo, Aikido, and other martial traditions. Therefore, if we were to summarize the relationship between the catfish and martial arts in a single sentence, it would be this. The catfish itself is not a symbol of martial arts. Rather, the catfish represents the immense forces and disasters that a martial deity must subdue, while its slippery and difficult to control nature also evokes martial concepts involving flexible body movement and the redirection of force. Hoping to draw upon the power and strength associated with the catfish, there are also helmets decorated with catfish motifs, as well as sword guards featuring catfish designs. Koi have long been regarded as auspicious fish in Japanese culture. One of the main reasons for this is the Chinese legend behind the expression Toryumon, or the Dragon Gate. According to an ancient Chinese legend, if a carp succeeds in swimming up the waterfall known as the Dragon Gate on the Yellow River, it will transform into a dragon. From this legend came the expression Toryumon, which refers to overcoming difficult trials and achieving success. When this story was introduced to Japan, the koi came to be seen as more than just a fish. It became a symbol of someone who does not give in to hardship, but continues to strive and move upward. This symbolism strongly overlaps with the way of life of samurai and martial artists. Martial arts training is not something that can be mastered in a single day. Practitioners repeat the same techniques over and over, endure grueling training, and gradually improve their skills. In this sense, the image of a koi swimming against the current and climbing a waterfall can be seen as a reflection of the warrior who overcomes rigorous training and becomes stronger. What is particularly important in understanding the relationship between koi and martial arts is the idea of overcoming difficulties and continually improving oneself. As an aside, even in the world of the Yakuza, many people have traditionally favored tattoos depicting a koi swimming up a waterfall. It is said that such a tattoo can represent the determination of someone at the beginning of their criminal career to overcome the trials ahead and one day become a dragon. The ise ebi, or Japanese spiny lobster, has long been cherished in Japan as an auspicious delicacy from the sea. One reason is its magnificent appearance, particularly its long antennae and curved body. Its long antennae are likened to a person's beard, while its curved body resembles an elderly person with a stooped back. Because of this, the ise ebi came to symbolize the wish for longevity and a long life. On the other hand, when we look at the ise ebi in relation to the samurai, it has another fascinating characteristic. That is its hard shell covering its entire body. The ise ebi looks almost as though it is wearing armor. Its impressive antennae, sharp legs and hard shell would have appeared extremely powerful and imposing to people in the past. For this reason, the appearance of the ise ebi came to evoke ideas of martial power, courage and strength, and there are even surviving examples of kabuto helmets designed with motifs inspired by the ise ebi. From the perspective of martial arts, the turtle has one particularly important characteristic: its hard shell. When it senses danger, a turtle withdraws its head and limbs into its shell, giving it an excellent natural defense against predators. This image evokes the concepts of guarding and defense in martial arts. In Judo and Jujutsu, a defensive position in which a person gets down on all fours, keeps the elbows tightly tucked against the body, tucks the chin to protect the neck, and curls up with the abdomen facing the floor is known as the turtle position. Turtles are also considered symbols of good fortune and longevity in Japan, which is why turtle motifs can sometimes be found on sword guards, tsuba, and other martial arts-related objects. The frog has been a beloved creature in Japanese culture since ancient times. One of the most famous connections between frogs and samurai culture comes from the wordplay between kairu, frog, and kairu, to return. For people setting out on a journey or going to war, the hope of returning home safely was extremely important. Because of this wordplay, the frog came to be associated with the auspicious wish to return safely or return home. This was certainly relevant to the samurai as well. Once a warrior went onto the battlefield, his life was naturally in danger. Therefore, in addition to praying for victory and good fortune in battle, the wish to come back alive was also extremely important. For this reason, rather than symbolizing victory in battle, the frog can be understood as a symbol embodying the wish to return safely from battle.
Thank you very much for watching until the end. The number of likes on this video will help us decide the direction of our future videos. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider leaving a like.